research in general is a good way for us to learn about effective, efficient, and feasible strategies and interventions that can really help children, adolescents, adults, families, and providers. And one of the things that can help us, one of the strategies is what we call community engaged research. And that's where we are really partnering with the community in identifying research goals and in identifying needs. So it's not just on the part of the researcher that's identifying or prioritizing what the research should be, but it's a real, genuine, and true partnership with the community. And by community, that can be organizations, that can be families, that could be a school, including teachers and other educators, but really partnering with stakeholders in order to identify what is that need that we need to look at, how do we want to design the intervention, and really that partnership. So, community engaged research is a really good way to make sure that we also can get buy in for research. So, we're able to recruit individuals and they're able to benefit by the research that we have. And implementation science is really a procedure and it is a way, a strategy to look at bridging that gap from what we call research to practice. So often, a lot of times, researchers are doing really great work and we find that things are effective. And maybe that's effective in a lab setting, or maybe that's effective under certain conditions that we need when we are implementing and designing research studies. But we also want to make sure that that research gets into the hands of the community. So it gets into the hands of the people and the populations that it's intended for. We don't want that research all the time to kind of just stay in an academic institution or just to stay in a research article or a journal. We really want to make sure that we're translating that research and what we call scaling it so it's able to be implemented as kind of as intended. And so, one way to really look at that is what we call implementation science. And that is going to really help us translate research and implement it under certain procedures. So, with that, there can be different phases that we use. Some of the beginning ones may be looking at exploration and preparation. So, partnering with stakeholders, designing and thinking about what the need is, identifying barriers. And this is a good strategy that can be used when we want to partner with schools, when we want to look at how we are designing and thinking about research that we ultimately want to end up being implemented in schools and being used long term. So, an example of a community engaged research project and something using tenets and principles of implementation science could be translating research, so what we call a randomized controlled trial. And that's where we have an experimental group that receives an intervention, and then we have another group that does not receive that specific or exact intervention. And so there has been work that's been done where we want to say, how do we then take that intervention and translate that or make it feasible that for something that can be implemented in the community. So some of the steps in that are partnering with organizations, and that's some of the work that we've done and that I've been involved in, is taking what we call an RCT, that randomized controlled trial, and trying to say, okay, now we want this. Our ultimate goal is for the community to use this intervention. Our research showed that it was effective and that it was well designed, that it was effective with parents, and that children made benefits by it. So now what do we need to do to make sure that we can translate this and that we can scale it for the community? So we did a lot of partnership with that. We reached out to different community agencies. We really looked at building a relationship with them over time. This is not something that happens quickly. It's something that we need to invest in. So we took the time to partner. We took the time to listen and to say, what are the needs of the populations that you are working with? And how can we work together? How can we come up with some shared goals? And so we really kind of organized a tight unit, a tight team of people that we had buy-in to our intervention. And together we took their input. So there are times that we said, this is what we have now. This is what the intervention looks like. What can we do to make it even better? And so we got a lot of input about that. And we were open to making those changes to the intervention. So there's a lot of what we call iterations to that. So we go back and forth between, okay, we put this into place. Now, what do we think about that? We also had focus groups. So we wanted to make sure as we are going through this process of adapting the intervention, are we making sure that we're getting all the input that we need? So we went to make sure that we're talking with, for example, teachers, we're talking to families, we're talking to community organization providers, and we're really incorporating their feedback into what we're doing. And along the way, we're continuing to engage our stakeholders in that. There are some points that we realize, we might need to do some capacity building. And so with that, what we're doing is we're teaching and we're training on specific skills that will ultimately help our community to implement this intervention. So it's a process that takes some time, but it's a process that really pays off in the long run when we want to make sure that these interventions that we're doing in research can be translated and can be adapted for the community.